Hi, everybody. Good to see you all.
Hi, Tom.
Hello. All right. Why don't I'm going to share my screen, and Bonnie is letting people in right now, and we'll get started in a second. And I'll share my screen for the beginning. All right, why don't we get started? I think it looks like most people are in. Thank you all for being here. It's great to see everybody on the last day of March. I thought spring was coming for a second there, but it turns out maybe not. I guess it's supposed to snow tonight. We'll see. All right, so first, can everyone see my screen, or can anyone not see my screen? We're good. Okay. I'm leaving it in this view just because I have some notes for this data slide that I want to be able to read as I'm talking about it, because it's a new visualization for us. So we've been doing lunch with Tom now for every other week for about, I don't know, a couple of months, I guess. I've personally really enjoyed the time with you all, and the time each every other week to give a little bit of an update on where we are, and to hear kind of your thoughts about and questions about sort of where BSD is and where we should be going. So the purpose of this is really just another opportunity for engagement. I had three priorities coming in: engagement, equity, and deep learning. And I've been working to figure out a bunch of different ways to engage and to communicate information, and also just to be able to have open conversations about BSD-wide issues. And so it's an opportunity for me to meet with you, with staff, with parents, with members of any members of the public who are just invested in our success, and to do those and to build relationships and community, because I think it's really important that we have time for relationship building, and as we build community. The only thing I would say is, if you have a question that's specific about you or your role or that of your child, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to have an individual conversation. But if we kind of keep the kind of very specific questions about individual folks off of this call, that'd be great. And there's always some overlap, so that's okay too. So what I'll do is I'll talk, and Bonnie, if you can kind of time me and make sure I don't go over 15 minutes. I don't think I will today. And then we have had some breakout rooms. I don't think we have a breakout question scheduled for today.
Right.
So I'll talk, and we'll just sort of open it up after that.
Okay, I'll manage the time then.
Thank you, Bonnie. All right, and so 15 minutes for that, up to 15 minutes for that, for the updates, and then a 45-minute conversation, or however much time we want, up to 45 minutes. So what's driving our work this year, we have a 5-year strategic plan, and we're in the 5th year of our 5-year strategic plan. So what we did this year as a cabinet, and the cabinet are the members of the district office who are either directors or executive directors or principals, and we set a set of 6 goals this summer, and those are measurable goals. They're all pretty, they're relatively broad, right? And they're also reach goals, because we set them for 1 year, in to make sure that we had measurable goals that we were working toward, that we were using data to make decisions, and that we were getting in the habit of coming back to a set of goals as we move into our next 5-year strategic plan. And so this is in some ways also just helping us build the muscles as a district of having goals, and building work plans off of those goals, and then tracking our progress toward those goals. I think the strategic plan will build off of this, and then the idea with these goals too is that over time they evolve and are updated and change. So you can see the 6 goals that we have here. We have been going through one of these each time that we've met, and I think we are at this goal 5. And so the 5th goal here, I've just been sort of going over one slide as we do this every other week. So if you've been here before, you've seen it. If not, this is new, but this is our goal 5. So goal 5 is around AP honors and dual enrollment completion. And our goals, going back to the previous slide, on the left-hand side, you see the goal, right, which is goal 5, AP honors and dual enrollment completion and success, reflect the demographics of the high school. And then we have sort of equity focused goals on your right-hand side as you're looking at the screen. And that measure for goal 5 is that we will increase the % of students of color who take AP honors and dual enrollment courses. So here's the data. This is the data actually from 1920. And Karen Vogel is our data coordinator for the district and helps us kind of keep on track in terms of how we're analyzing our data and what data we're presenting. This slide I'm still working through. I just saw it for the first time earlier today. So we have in the high school, our 41% of our students identify as BIPOC, and in our honors courses, 19%. So you can see over on the left-hand side here, 19% of students in our honors courses are BIPOC or identify as BIPOC. 20% in AP, 20% of students identify as BIPOC in our advanced placement classes, and 28% identify as BIPOC out of the 41% of the overall population in dual enrollment. So it's pretty clear we have work to do in this area. This is from 1920, and so we will be, one of the things that we're really trying to work through in this specific goal area in goal 5 is being able to see the progression across years. We don't have, or we're still working on sort of figuring out where we were in prior years and in dual enrollment and in some of our other measures there. So that's where we are. Big picture is that, you know, I want people to kind of see the goals that we have and what we're driving toward, and then we have work to do in this area and making sure that our higher level courses are accessible to all students, and that our students are prepared, right? And we're really preparing all of our students for those higher level courses. In terms of updates, just a number of updates, a lot going on in the world right now, and in Burlington and in Vermont. The first is that there are a number of things that are piled on top of each other right now that are taking up significant time for the district and individual schools. And those are really these top 2 things. So the first is that we are beginning the recovery planning timeline. So the state is using this project management language of the state of emergency, which is what we're currently in. And they're telling us that we're moving from a state of emergency into a state of recovery. And that recovery part of the pandemic is being prescribed. So activities that we're going to do as a part of this are being prescribed and kind of supported by guidance from the Agency of Education. So the Agency of Education put out guidance around recovery planning and the timeline for that and the requirements for that. And it's a really quick timeline to get this planning started. And so we actually have an April deadline for the first draft of a recovery plan. And we are actually still organizing as a recovery, as as a team around how to do the recovery. So this will be an iterative process. It will be ongoing. We're going to get something to the agency in April, and then knowing that the implementation really begins in June, and we want to do a broader engagement and kind of organize ourselves and bring teachers and families and students into the planning around this, and staff who aren't teachers also as we build this plan. And so that it'll be a plan that we're starting to develop now, but it will be ongoing. This plan, the recovery work, also comes with federal stimulus, federal dollars. So we've got, we were allocated almost $7 million in either, they call it ESSER, ESSR 2, and then they just released an ESSER 3, and that ESSER 3 brings to districts additional funding. So the funding comes from the federal government to the states, and then the states have to allocate 80% of what they get to districts, and they do that allocation based on need. And so because we have a high level of need, a high level of, and they're basing need on Title I eligibility. So because of our Title I eligibility, which is essentially a poverty rating, we are being provided with I think it's 16 million in ESSER 3. So overall, between now and fiscal year 2024, we're going to see upwards of 19 to $20 million in ESSER 2 and 3. And so we're still learning about what and sort of understanding the guidance and figuring out what this means and what the requirements are for our planning and our spending around this. But it is two things. It's an incredible opportunity for us to really think about how we plan for recovery in the long term, over 2 or 3 years, right? And how we really focus our efforts around 3 areas that the state is asking us to think about. One is academic success, the other is re-engagement, and the third is social and emotional and well-being and mental health. And so this will be tied with our MTSS work, which is the multi-tiered systems of support. There's a lot of overlap there, and there's a lot of opportunity for us. And with opportunity comes responsibility. It actually is hard. It can be hard for districts to spend funds that are short-term and not get themselves into trouble by, adding positions that can't be sustained over time, and doing work that can't be sustained over time. So we have a lot of thinking to do about how we do this in a way that is sustainable and that will benefit our community. And so I'm excited to get that work going. Unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately, just sort of it is what it is. It's coming at the same time that we are hearing from this Agency of Education and Governor Scott. We've been hearing from the state for the past month and a half or so that they are wanting us to get back in person more. And what we're learning is that the physical distancing, what we had been hearing for a month and a half or so, is that the physical distancing requirements will likely change. And last week or a week and a half ago, the physical distancing requirements for the CDC changed from 6 feet of physical distancing for students age grades 7 and above, from 6 feet to 3 feet. Right now, what Secretary French has told the superintendents is that the medical experts are reviewing that recommendation from the CDC to determine if that's when that will change in Vermont. And what we're hearing, and what I'm hearing, and kind of I'm getting strong indications that will change either this week or next week in updated guidance. And that guidance will be slimmed down from the original guidance and will encourage districts to get back in person more, and will reduce the guidance from 6 to 3 feet for students grades 7 through 12. It currently allows it up to grade 6. We haven't made a move at grade 6 because grade 6 is a part of our middle schools. So you probably saw in my community updates that I've asked principals to start planning for what that would look like. I see this not really as a decision that I have, but as an obligation that we would have as a district to get back in person more. And it's just, the timing is really challenging for the district, for our principals, for our teachers, for our staff, for our district offices. It's an incredibly challenging timeline just because we're nearing down to the end of the year, and with at the end of that April break, we're down to 7 weeks. But 7 weeks is also 7 additional weeks of learning, right? And that's not insignificant. So we're preparing, but the conditions also matter, right? And the conditions are not great right now in Vermont and in Burlington. And so we have to make sure that the conditions are also allow us to be in person, in addition to the guidance changing. Those two things have to happen. And if those two things happen, then I believe it's our obligation as stewards of a school district serving a community that needs us to offer more in person. So what we're looking at is probably 4.5 days in elementary school of, it's currently 4. So we'll be moving to 4.5 days, and 4 days in middle school. But again, I've asked principals to plan for that. I've started to message it out to the community, but it's not done yet. And so that's something that we still are planning for, and the conditions have to be right, number one, and the guidance would need to change. And so that's what we're hearing is likely to happen. And I see hands up, so you can keep your hands up. I'll go through just these last 2 pieces. These are kind of faster, and then I'll open it up and we can have an open conversation. So strategic planning is the next piece here. Strategic planning is happening, is starting. So we're going to be working with an organization to be determined that we're going to work with to help us develop, to co-construct a strategic plan that we implement, that we work towards as a district, a 5-year strategic plan. So there'll be more to come on that. I've also been kind of sending the message out around BHS and BTC on Institute Road, the building on Institute Road, because we have we continue to get bad news or concerning news about the contamination of the building due to the PCBs. So most recently we found PCBs in the glue under the tiling under the floor, which has seeped into the concrete. And so we are not making a decision right now on that, but I just want people to know that the more we learn about the building, the more concerns that we have. And so there is this possibility that we would need to build a new building or move in that direction. And so I don't want that to be a surprise to people. And the last is that the BHS principal search is active, is happening. We have good candidates. We've got a great committee doing this work, and we're planning for a community forum on April 15th.
That is 15 minutes.
Thank you. Right on time. All right. So I'm going to stop my share. And I see Holly and Kara. So Holly, why don't you go first, and then Kara, and then you all can just, if you want to talk, just raise your hand and off we go.
All right, I have questions and comments. So as a parent of a middle schooler, I'm really excited about the idea of them possibly going more than 2 days a week. I think that's awesome. But as a parent and teacher of an elementary age student, I'm really worried about going 4.5 days for a variety of reasons. My big question here is, as a staff member, am I going to lose childcare at the Miller Center? Because right now my daughter goes there all day, so I can work on Wednesdays. And if she's coming to school until 11 a.m., who's going to pick her up? Where's she going to go? How can I keep working? So that's one of my questions. And then I also just feel like for parents in general, I could be wrong, but I feel like going to school till 11 is super inconvenient for drop off, pickup. We've got to figure out all the duties. Like it seems like a lot to figure out for a very short benefit. I'm not sure how much learning will happen in those 6 days when you calculate the hours of how long they're in school, all those transitions. The kids have been through so much. So I just have a lot of like thoughts and concerns swirling around in my mind about that. Maybe other people do as well.
Yeah, Holly, I'm definitely hearing a lot about a lot of concerns about the half day on Wednesday. And they are coming to me in 3 different areas. So in one area, it's that the half day is not enough. In another, I'm hearing that. I'm hearing the half day is too much. And I'm hearing that the half day is okay, but we have to work to figure out the sort of care and the way that we can support families who have kids who are currently getting childcare on those days, and other types of care, because there's programming in a number of different places. One thing I forgot to add too, and I don't know, Holly, you mentioned being excited or thinking it was good to have the middle schools go back 4 days, or feeling good about that for your family. The other thing, one of the things we've been thinking about, we're starting to plan for, is testing. So providing COVID tests for students in middle school as we're going back. So I wonder if you're asking questions, or I don't know, Holly, if you have a gut kind of reaction to that, but that's one of the kind of strategies we're planning for now. It's not a definite, and there's logistical things to figure out, but interested in your thoughts on that. All right, Kara.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I'm going to tag on to Holly. As a teacher in the district, I think that there's a lot of us that are feeling like we're not really sure why we're increasing to 4.5 days at elementary school. I personally think there needs to be a survey out to parents to find out if that's going to make their lives easier or make their lives harder. I think as teachers, it will definitely make our lives harder, not because we don't want to be with the kids, because we really do want to be with the kids, but because we are going to have to restructure our whole school schedule, because we are now going to have increased pods to accommodate for multiple groups being outside at recess. And so what that means is if kids get COVID, then a larger group of kids are missing school and a larger group of teachers are missing school. Also, when there's absenteeism in the staff right now, we're having trouble finding subs. And I think with these increased pods and the fact that teachers are now required to be at school on a half day on Wednesday, there's going to be more absenteeism in the schools. And I just don't know how the district's planning to address that sub issue. I think that the direction you're headed in for the middle and high school students is completely appropriate. I think with elementary school students being already at 4 days, it feels like it's not really being responsive to add that 0.5 day, as Holly said, for 6 days of instruction. It just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. And I think that for teachers, it's really going to push some of us over the limit. We have been bending over backwards this whole time to make this work for both our families and our students. And I think at the elementary level, we've done a really outstanding job keeping kids safe and engaged for the past, almost a year at 4 days a week. And I just want to make sure that the impacts are really being thought out and the decisions are very intentional in regard to what's best for families and their schedules, and what's best for teachers and their lives, because we are also scheduling things on Wednesdays that we won't be able to maintain when we go back to full, half day on Wednesday. So thank you for listening.
Got it. Thank you, Kara. Yeah, just I see whose hands? I see Jen and
It's Dana.
who is it?
It's Dana.
Hi, Dana. All right, Jen and Dana. And I'll just say just 2 things quickly to Kara. The first thing I want to make sure I'm clear on is that I feel that all of our schools have done an amazing job. And it's because of our teachers, it's because of our staff, it's because of our principals, it's because of you. that we've been successful, and our community, right? Like together we've made it work. And so I really appreciate that. Someone wants to get in. Bonnie, can you let someone into the meeting? And particularly for elementary, because you all have been back 4 days a week with sort of, and we're the first group to take the larger, to deal with sort of the concerns, right, around that are legitimate around having more students coming back into classrooms and managing that. And I just have been so impressed with the way that you all and our schools have managed that. So I want to first thank you. The second piece is that I think I've been meeting with a lot of different families groups in my time here, and I've met recently with our multilingual liaisons and a group of Somali Bantu families and a group of Nepali families, and I've heard really clearly from the sort of multilingual family community that not being in school 5 days a week has been a disaster. They've actually told me that it has been a disaster for them. Even though we've offered, right, 4 days a week for students who are English learners, 4 days a week for students who have IEPs from the very beginning, it's been clear to me in those conversations how important it is for those last 7 weeks of school to be back in 5 days a week for that stability, that consistency throughout the day, the food, right? There are a lot of things that we provide that our community needs us for. So, but I hear the concern. To be honest, I wish the guidance was coming out in June, and we could plan. It would make it's stressful, right? For me personally, for all of us. And so I hear that. And so I guess I kind of started in the beginning where I don't really feel like it's a decision for me. I feel like we have an obligation. And if the guidance changes, then it's our obligation to be in school as much as we can. All right, Jen and Dana. Jen and then Dana.
Hi, it's Jen Coleman. I have a child and children in the district, and then I'm also a private practice psychologist in 3 schools in the district. And I just want to make the point too that when we, kids structure, consistency, all of those things are so important. And we've been going on this track 4 days at the elementary level, and I should say that I work elementary, middle, and high school. And work with a wide range. And to Kara's point that, when we change the structure and we change the consistency, what we're doing is we're adding in transitions, and transitions are so hard for kids at the elementary school level. And it's just neurocognitivity and how their brains work. And so I understand the need to go, 5 days a week. Kids need to be in school, absolutely, as much as we can get them there. What I hope is that we have the resources, if that is what is going to be decided for us, we have the resources to be able to support this big transition. It will be a big transition for kids going back another full day. So that's my points.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, and I see Kara put in the chat, it's the guidance, it is likely that the state will not direct districts.
Okay.
But they've been really clear to us that it's an expectation. And I think what you'll see is every district in our region doing something very similar. And so that's part of what's happening too. I meet with the superintendents in the Champlain Valley twice a week now. We usually meet every other week, but we've been meeting twice a week this year just because of all the stuff that's happening with managing districts during a pandemic. And I think we're going to see most of the districts doing something similar. If the guidance comes out to reduce to 3 feet, and if the conditions start to change. The one thing I didn't say earlier is that the high school is in a different situation. So the high school Most of the high schools around the region are not planning on increasing in-person instruction right now because of scheduling at just basic schedules, right, for students at BHS, in addition to BTC and the impacts of the tech center with 12 sending schools, and the way that we've had to schedule. So we have had to put more students in some classes, in many classes than we normally do. And so we have some classes at 27, 28, 29, 30 at the high school. And if we wouldn't be able to bring them back into the same classrooms. And so we would have to reschedule students likely. And that's about 300 students that would be impacted. And so that's the biggest obstacle for high school right now. And Lauren McBride, our interim principal at BHS, has been talking to the regional principals, and I think everyone is not finding a way to make more in person happen as it stands or as it stood yesterday in the high school, and the superintendents are in the same place as their principals, obviously. So that's not a done deal yet, but I wanted to add that in because that's a pretty big piece. Okay, Dana.
Hi. So I also work in the district at the elementary level as a para, but I'm also a parent of a middle schooler. I want to just say that part of what I was going to say is actually what everyone else has just said about the half day on Wednesdays and the challenges that it meets, and what Jen had just said about the social emotional parts of it with the transitions. I also was curious, as the parent of a middle schooler, and I'm going to use my daughter as an example, but I know she's not the only one in this situation, is she is considered a hybrid student, but has not been into in-person attendance since the beginning of the fall, but has continued to work remotely. What happens to students like that when we go back 4 days a week, is that going to still be an option? Or how will we schedule all those different kids? Because I know there's many of them that are like that. So that's one of my concerns about the middle school 4 days, although I love the idea. I think it's very important for them to be 4 days. I'm just worried about that handful of children that might get lost in that. Another question I had, which Holly actually put in the chat, was, will after school be available for students on those Wednesdays? Because I've already heard about the difficulties with childcare for the elementary getting out at 11:30. And the only other question I have is, it sounds like it's all up in the air right now, but the guidance might be changing. When would we know for sure? And I know we have a tentative date, but how much time will we get before that actually becomes a reality date? So thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So first, middle school, we will keep the remote option. It may look slightly different, but we are keeping the remote option for the remainder of the year for middle school students. In terms of after school, we will not be able to offer our full after school programming on Wednesdays, which is, yeah, so that's if we were full day, we would be able to. At half day, we're not able to, based on the staffing of after school and when the people who run the after school programs are available. But I also just don't see a path for us to be back in 5 full days, right, at elementary school. So we may still be able to kind of be creative and I think creatively on after school, but right now that's a barrier. And your last question, I'm blanking.
Right now, it's all kind of like we have a tentative date.
Yeah.
The guidance might change.
Yeah. So the Secretary of Education meets with all the superintendents once a week. We actually didn't meet. We met. Did we meet last week? Yeah, we met last week. And he's saying that there probably will be some guidance that will come out this week in draft form and then will be finalized next week. He also told us last week that the medical professionals that they're working with we're reviewing the literature and the research on the 3 feet that the CDC put out. He told us though that it was more of a when, not an if, but a when that guidance would change from 6 to 3 feet. So, but we don't know for sure. And he is clear with us that when it's helpful for us because we hear kind of where things are going, but until it's in writing, we don't know. So but what I'm expecting, Jada, is next week we get formal guidance. And if that formal guidance doesn't move from 6 feet to 3 feet, all the conversation is a much different conversation, meaning we can't come back in middle school 4 days a week.
Since elementary school has already just been 3 feet anyway, like, is there a real reason why we have to change?
Change to 4.5.
Yeah, just see it again. Like, I mean, it feels like such a headache for such a little payout. And, I understand the middle school, the guidance changes, so far they've been keeping it 6 feet apart, but we've been 3 feet apart for a very long time. So like nothing's really changing for us, but yet we're thinking about going back another half day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not sure what the guidance is going to say, but what I'm anticipating is that there will be some change in the guidance around pod structures.
Okay.
So the way that the pod structures are articulated in the guidance now for secondary allows for more movement across pods. So that's what I'm anticipating. But this has been really hard because we are just anticipating what's going to be in the guidance and we don't know yet. But what we've heard is that we need to be ready to move quickly. And we know that because the school years, we have 7 weeks left in the school year after the break. So, Carolyn. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, I found the button.
All right.
Thank you for taking my question. I wondered, I have a daughter in middle school and I think that's great to go back to 4 days a week. But what I wonder about is the way they scheduled the classes in middle school this year. Yep. She has specials like algebra only on remote days, and it's only been taught remotely. And I know that one thing that was on the table was basically just to end those specials, not have French, not have algebra. And I really hope that that's not really on the table. I think that would be detrimental to the kids. So I support the idea of going back, but I just wanted to mention that I think that one of the plans I've heard that's on the table to just basically eliminate those classes that we have not been doing at all in person. I don't think that that's a good solution. I don't know if you can speak to that or if that is actually on the table, but it was discussed at one meeting.
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. It is probably the biggest challenge with coming back to school 4 days a week is figuring out the UA classes and any other special classes, any other specials. Anyway, so that is one of the biggest challenges. It's not that we won't offer them. It's that now that we've measured, because I was just at Hunt this morning and they were all in school today, sort of measuring out the 3 feet and seeing what's possible. And it turns out that it's thankfully like it is possible to do the measuring. So that was sort of issue number one. Issue number two is the UAs and other specials. So that's something that we're going to have to figure out. And the Edmonds and Hunt teams are working on that right now. So it will need to look different, but we need to continue to offer those courses.
So does that mean that they will be offered till the end of the year, like all the rest of the core classes? It's not actually on the table to just stop those when we go back to 4 days a week.
Yeah, but we may need to be flexible. This is you're in an area that's the biggest challenge for us right now, and so I'm reluctant to make a promise because I'm a little bit we're trying to figure this out right now. My expectation is we do whatever we can to keep those going. My mom was an art teacher. I think we need to offer algebra. I think we need all those other types of courses for students to have a successful academic, career. So I want to do everything we can to preserve that. And I think there are ways to do it. But it may mean utilizing time. So it may mean flexibility within the schedule on those 4 days that we are in person. Meaning that, yeah. So, and that's what the teams are trying to schedule and work out right now.
Okay. I understand. I know it's tough to answer all of these questions, but, just speaking as the parent of an 8th grader, the whole concept where 8th grade math got mushed in with 7th grade math, there's
Yes.
been very little instruction in that. And I think I'm worried about our current crop of 8th graders being prepared to undertake their math courses when they get to high school next year. And so I guess I wanted to emphasize that, especially around the math, I want to make sure that we don't shortcut any of their instruction that they have left. If anything, I'd love to see it, increase so that these kids really go to high school prepared next year for their math classes. Thank you.
Yeah, no, God, I hear you. And I mean, I'm okay with the hard questions, because they help us think through the biggest challenges that we have. And they also show me what you all are thinking about in a way that it may not be in my head. So I appreciate the questions. Thank you, Carolyn. Katie.
Hi, I am Katie Mobley, and I have a 7th grader at Edmonds and a 4th grader at Champlain. And I know you've heard from a lot of staff about the implications of going back a half day, but as a parent of an elementary school child, I just want to emphasize that I don't think that half day on Wednesdays is going to add a lot. And then yet I recognize what you said about our newcomer population. And I wonder if there's a way to look at this where it's an opt-in situation, so that if there is a population in Burlington that needs that's an option that they're given. Because I think many of us have crafted schedules working at home around Wednesdays, and the idea of trying to figure that out over the next 7 weeks, I'll just be honest, is feels like an unnecessary burden. And I appreciate that you have requirements from our Agency of Education. That said, I'm not always impressed with our statewide Agency of Education and some of the decisions that they make. So I feel like our district has figured out Wednesdays in the past, and I would hope we'd be given some leniency around that. The other piece I would add sort of ties on to what Carolyn said around middle school. And also just, I think there's such a value to getting those students back. And I recognize that the schedule is a huge part of that. And I wonder about extending some of the options for middle school students. I think middle school students are high school students as well. I just don't happen to have a high school student yet, have really been pretty shortchanged this year. I look at what's happened in the middle school versus elementary school, and I just think they need more time. My 13-year-old would probably kick me if he heard me saying this, but I really feel like they just haven't been given the depth, it seems, that I feel like my elementary school child has had. And then the last piece I'm just going to add is around testing. I think you raised that before, and our 13-year-old is actually home. He's a close contact. We just went to the testing center on Pine Street today. And I will say that that process is super easy and convenient. And if that meant that more kids could stay in school, I would highly recommend that. I also hope that it would mean that there's an opportunity to have middle school students interacting with different middle school students. So the other example, and I know this is we're all giving our own anecdotes, but he is in a mixed class of 7th and 8th graders. He sees 9 children every Monday and Thursday, and it's getting really hard to get him to go to school because it's the same 9 kids, and it's not the same. So anything that could happen where we feel like we're thinking about safety and being strategic, but also giving our middle school, and I'm sure high school students are in the same situation, an opportunity to really have more interactions that feel good and focused on social emotional learning, I would just emphasize. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm hearing sort of the concern around the half day from the parents' perspective too at elementary school, and the idea of choice there, I think, is interesting, and the needs that our middle school students have to come back together more as a whole community. I think I have a 6th grade daughter at Hunt, and twin 2nd grade daughters at Flynn, and they've had great years, and all things considered, but my middle schooler was so mad at me when she learned that they weren't going back 4 days and they were going to stay in their small class. She has an awesome teacher and an awesome class, but she wants just the experience of being in the community more. On the other hand, my twins were very upset with me for making them go back 4 days. So there's no winning in my household. All right. Other thoughts, questions? Victor, do you want to add something? You look like maybe you're ready to say something.
No, I mean, these are all really good questions. I was actually texting like Christy Galise, who runs our extended learning programs. She's totally aware, Holly, as you know, around the Miller Center childcare we're providing for staff and trying to figure that piece out. I never made it up to Hunt this morning. That was my plan. Tom, I'm glad you were there because they were really struggling with that. We made that suggestion that they used this morning to have teachers really go in and measure. So it's good to hear that there is the physical space. Yeah, these are tough decisions all around. And it's really important that we're hearing this feedback. I'm actually going to jump away. I'm at the high school and I'm about to give our first of many, many, many tours to incoming 9th graders. And so I'm actually meeting someone in 2 minutes to help with that tour, Seahorse Pride person. So good seeing everybody. And yeah, we have 7 weeks of school left after the break and we want to hit it, up here. That's where we want to be, everybody, students, teachers, staff. So it's exciting and it's a lot of work. It's been a really long year for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Victor. For those of you who don't know Victor, I'm sure most of you do. He's our coordinator of engagement and has really helped us pull together. We have a couple advisory groups and in this meeting, and also supporting us in the transition to downtown BHS and sort of engagement around there. Thank you, Victor.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Peggy. Carolyn, your hand is up too. Do you want it still up or? Okay, all right. Peggy.
Hi there. My name is Peggy O'Neill. I have Kid at EMS and BHS. And so I appreciate the conversations right now because it's the here and now. But I want to look a little bit to the future about the high school, right? At what point or what data do the stakeholders, taxpayers, the school district, the city need in order to figure out what are the next steps in looking at Institute Road? At what point do we say, okay, this is, we're going to go ahead and invest in this, or we're going to do more testing? I feel like we keep kicking, when the PCBs were first found in summer of 2019, and then COVID hit. When do we say, okay, this is really our plan. This is the last test that we have. And this indicates now that we can't really keep throwing good money at this problem, but we have to rethink it. So do you have a timeline for us? I know my 2nd kid is not going to graduate from Institute Road. Maybe my 6th grader will, who knows?
Yeah, you and I are in the same boat there with the 6th grader. I've been messaging and this, the reality is that in August, we will have, that's like the end date at which we will have a big decision to make about the future of the current building and the current re-envisioning project around the BHS building at Institute Road. So there are, and what I'm sort of trying to indicate here without saying we've made a decision, because we haven't made a decision yet, but everything we learn, the more we learn, the bigger the problem is. And learning a few weeks ago that the PCBs are in the concrete flooring. That means they're in the floor, they're in the walls, they're in the caulking around the windows, they're in the soil, and they're in the air, right? Now, that we still have our consultants doing the learning where they are, and they're going to do a pilot project, and they're going to do what they can to see if we can get those levels, those PCB levels below the 15 nanograms per cubic meter. But it's just not looking good that they will be able to do that. The problem is this pilot project doesn't end until July or early August. And so we will have that big decision to make in August, unless we get more information before then that says, look, we don't need to wait till August. We know now. And I think that would be if we knew that it was no longer viable. And that's sort of, we're getting closer and closer to that, but we're not there yet. So I get it's a long and drawn out process that's taken for a long time, and yeah, it's not great, but that's where we are. So by the summer, or during the summer, we'll make a call. Thanks for the question, Peggy. Megan.
Hi, everyone. Just two things. One is I really appreciate the opportunity to be in this informal space with parents who are also teachers, parents and teachers. I've been in Burlington a long time, and we haven't had this opportunity very often to have folks from different schools who have different hats, and we are all in this together. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has shared their concerns with Tom. And I really wanted to say thank you to Tom for your active listening and reflecting back to us, and for being the kind of leader that I have seen will now act on those things and not just hear them and say, thanks very much, see you next time in 2 weeks. So I just really want to honor this space, and I have a lot of gratitude for this space right now. And then the other piece, sort of piggybacking on Peggy's, is I've had the opportunity to tour downtown BHS. Yes. And I hope that, and I think I know you at this point well enough to know this is part of your thinking, is not just the deficits of Institute Road, but the richness and dynamic nature of having a downtown high school, I hope, is in the mix as we're thinking about what to do with our North End space. What was really striking to me is that going in and out of downtown BHS, in spite of the pit right there, the access to downtown resources is unreal and unparalleled. And, I have a senior who's taking classes at UVM, so he's part of dual enrollment. We know that it's not equitable right now. We know that the demographics of kids who do it reflect the demographics of our school. And yet, if we had a school downtown and kids could walk or bike or bus up to UVM, to Champlain College, to St. Mike's, like suddenly we've just changed the name of the game for access to not only our colleges and universities, but to internships, to jobs, to the Flynn, to the lake, to just a myriad of resources that Burlington has. And so I hope that's in sort of the thinking of not just sort of what are the deficits of, like, can we occupy it for environmental reasons, but what is the beauty and the richness and the equity and access that being downtown allows? Because I know there's some challenges, but I also wanted to say to parents, I don't know if you know, the district has been really responsive. So like the lights were too bright, and so we've taken out light bulbs, and the sound is an issue, and we're working with a sound person. I mean, the responsiveness right now to the needs of students in the community also feels unparalleled. So in spite of the hardship of COVID, I'm also just feeling like we're in a hopeful space. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Megan, also, this meeting partially came out of a conversation that Megan and I had back in November. So thank you for sticking in there with us and being willing to give me direct feedback and ideas. And I always appreciate that. And downtown, the greatest thing about downtown BHS is that it's downtown, all those things that you mentioned, right? The access there really, I think over time, could change what learning looks like in high school and really get at that deeper learning. that we all, value so much, right? But it can be hard to do. And when you get into sort of like the middle school into high school, things get just naturally more traditional because they're broken up by periods. You see a lot of different adults, you don't have as much time, and it's just harder to do. And so I think having that access to the lake and the businesses and the theaters and downtown is really pretty special. I will say we did look at a lot of spaces when we were beginning the re-envisioning, and there's not a ton of space. So so those are things that we'll just have to balance. But thank you. I see in the chat from Holly, from Kate, yes, from Carolyn, about the that goal 5. So we just sort of touched on it briefly. I'm happy if we want next week to spend a little time sort of unpacking that and spending a little more time, maybe in a breakout group, and then coming back and talking about that goal 5 around making sure that our higher level courses are accessible to all of our students and in a way that reflects our student population. I think this is really deep work for us. It is not about how we are placing students at the high school. It's about what our instructional model and our programming looks like from pre-K up to grade 12. So anyway, that's a big conversation. Kate.
Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on this.
You did it.
If we do that, could we, even though that was 1920 numbers, could we have 2021 also?
Yeah.
Just even if it's not a finalized year, because we now have a full-time dual enrollment coordinator. So it'd be interesting to see, and it's her first year, so to see if we're trending in a better direction.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We can look at the 2021 data, and the goals are set for 2021. So all we're looking at now is the baseline. So thank you for pointing that out, Kate. All right. Well, we're right up on 1 o'clock. We had great attendance today. Lots of good questions. I really appreciate seeing you all and hearing from you all. My email is tflanagan@bsd.bsdvt. Is that right, Bonnie?
Yes, VT.
Yeah, bsdvt.org. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or want to talk about anything kind of more individual to you and or your situation. And otherwise, we'll see you hopefully in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody.